Pointless stats all around us, especially during the NBA season. A player does something spectacular and the statisticians immediately find the most complex, pointless criteria they can imagine to try and put that achievement into context. It often leads to something like, LeBron becomes the first player in history to score 25 points, 7 rebounds, and 2 assists while driving to the game in an all-white Tesla. Alright, I exaggerated a little bit, but I have seen some made up stats that are almost just as ridiculous as that. So today, I wanted to try my hand in finding some pointless stats by creating my own wild criteria. What's up NBA fans, Dom2K on the mic, and to be honest, while I was grabbing random stats out of thin air, I actually think I dug up some interesting information. Some of these you're going to find completely pointless, some you're actually going to find very intriguing, and some of them are even going to be a combination of both. I was trying to find things that were just pointless, but I think I might have missed my mark there. So without further ado, I present to you 9 completely random / interesting / pointless stats from NBA history, and you can decide where you're going to rank them. Number 9. Westbrook's ancestor. No, don't get excited, this isn't one of those interesting story videos where I tell you about Westbrook's life and how his ancestors were Transformers and he beat the odds, none of that crazy stuff. Actually, with this stat, I was just looking at triple doubles. We all know Westbrook had a ton of those last season, and I assume we're going to be seeing him rack those up for years to come. But I got curious, what players in NBA history got a triple-double at the young and spry ages of 40 or older? Well, first this raises the question of how many players even made it in the league that long, and you may be surprised to find that only 27 players in the entire history of the NBA have played to or past that age. Out of those 27 players, only one player in one game had a triple-double. That was Karl Malone at the age of 40. He did this very early on in his one season with the Lakers on November 23, 2003 against the Spurs. Malone posted 10 points, 10 rebounds, and 11 assists on 4-9 shooting in a blowout of the defending champions. It was a quiet gentleman's triple-double, but still the only one in the history past the age of 40 nonetheless. I fully expect Westbrook to break this record one day, so come back and check this video in 2030 if YouTube is still around to see if I was right. Number 8. Total teamwork. This one isn't as pointless as it is random, and I actually find it interesting. I was running in my league with the 07 Cavaliers where I added Chris Paul, and by the time the season was over, we averaged 30 assists per game as the best passing team in the league. This caused me to wonder what teams in real life have averaged 30 assists or more throughout the history of the league. I'm glad I looked it up because I honestly had no clue how rare of a feat this was. Through all the teams in history, only 6 have managed to move the ball around enough to average 30 assists for a whole season. That list goes 85 Lakers, 79 Bucks, 83 Lakers, 79 Suns, 17 Warriors, and the 84 Nuggets. I was pretty surprised to find that out of this list, only the 85 Lakers and the 17 Warriors wound up winning the NBA title. If anything, this completely random stat should give you more appreciation of the basketball the Warriors play, because last season, you just watched them tack onto a list that was exclusive to 5 teams in NBA history, or it might just make you hate them more, hell I don't know. Number 7. No love for the lefties. There's not been that many amazing left-handed players in the NBA. You can name the obvious ones like Bosh and Ginobili, but the list runs thin pretty quickly. This caused me to wonder how many left-handed players in NBA history have averaged 30 or more points a game at any point in time. It probably doesn't surprise you that there's only been one in the entire history of the league, and that was Tiny Archibald in the 1973 season while playing for the Kansas City Omaha Kings. Tiny was actually the first player to ever lead the league in both points and assists, and if you remember him at all, you probably remember him from his Boston days, and that's because he dealt with injuries before that, including a ruptured Achilles. His 34 points per game season, which was the one where he made history for this stat, was actually the only time he ever averaged 30 in his career, and it was by far his greatest scoring season. But it kinda seems like he shouldn't be alone on this, right? Well, yeah, you were probably waiting for me to mention Harden earlier for great left-handed players. He's been right on the heels of 30 points a game for his last 2 seasons with 29 a game, so whenever he decides to explode for a few more 50-point games throughout the season, he should be able to tag on that extra point to become just the second left-handed player in NBA history to average 30 a game. Isaiah Thomas got close to this last year too, but I'm not sure if he's ever gonna break it. At the time of this recording, he's kinda hanging in the balance between the Celtics and the Cavaliers, and the trade might get void, so I don't know exactly where he's gonna be. But if everything goes through, it seems like he's gonna be playing with LeBron James, so I highly doubt he's gonna be averaging 30 points on that Cavs team. And as for James Harden, he's playing with Chris Paul now, who's gonna be sharing ball handling duties with him, so I'm not sure if he's ever gonna hit that 30 points a game mark either. Number 6. No love for lefties part 2. So I wanted to try and milk this left-handed gimmick for all it was worth, and I figured I could get another random stat out of it. Who are our great left-handed three-point shooters? For this one, I wanted to see how many left-handed players in NBA history actually qualified to be a league leader while shooting above 40% from the three-point line in a single season. This seems a bit extra for a few reasons. One, your three-point percentage doesn't require you to be a superstar, and I felt like my last search with 30 points per game did, so it was very hard to find anybody on that one. And two, this actually isn't too specific when you learn that if you search the same stat for right-handed shooters, you find that there's been 433 seasons where they've shot the three ball over 40%, led by Steve Kerr at a shocking 52.4% in 1995. But what did I find for our lefties? There's only been 23 individual seasons in the entire history of our beautiful league where the lefty shot the three ball over 40%. Even more shocking than that is the highest percentage you'll find for the league leading qualifiers is Troy Murphy at 45%. The right-handers had 47 of those. That's really quite astounding when you think about the gap there. Oh, and if you were wondering, to qualify as a league leader per NBA.com, you have to drain at least 82 threes in a season, so that was the criteria I used for the search. Number 5. Old timers. Okay, so we're done with that left-handed gimmick. For this search, I actually pulled up something interesting as I wanted to find out who were the players to average 25 points a game in a season when they were 35 years or older. This is a list that I have no doubt in my mind Kobe Bryant would have made if the basketball guys didn't take his Achilles, but they did, so we're left with this. My search results turned up only 2 players, Alex English in 1989 and Karl Malone in 2000. What you might want to take note of by now if you already haven't is that Karl Malone was a damn good player even in old age. I'm pretty sure no matter what I search for old age, he's gonna make that list. What's even more impressive is that Alex English did this while shooting 49% and Malone did it while shooting 50%, and both those guys played all 82 games of their seasons. These weren't just inefficient old guys chucking shots in their old age while missing a lot of games. Even if Kobe hadn't made this list, there's no chance it would have been anything close to those kind of percentages. Impressive feat for both guys. Random, but impressive. Number 4. The Jordanaires. If you know something about the Bulls' history when Michael was playing there, you know that he casted a shadow amongst his supporting players at times, causing the media to consider them the Jordanaires because he was so damn good and he was just such a big icon. Well, that caused me to think about it. Who have the Bulls really had aside from Michael Jordan in their franchise? Pippen was a good Robin, but he was never the type of league guy that Michael Jordan was. Rose was supposed to be the heir to the throne before his knees rage quit on him, and Jimmy Butler might not even be at his peak yet, and he's already gone. So with the lack of Batmans gracing the Bulls franchise, how many players aside from Michael Jordan have ever scored 50 points in a game? Totally pointless, totally random, but kinda interesting nonetheless. Chicago has 40 50-point performances in franchise history, and Michael owns a mind-blowing 36 of those. The other 4 only belong to 3 other players. Jimmy Butler did it twice, Jamal Crawford did it once, and Chet Walker did it once way back in 1972. And yeah, that's it. These guys are in some rarefied air. It looks to me like Michael Jordan has one of those records that's never going to be broken unless Brian Scalabrine comes out of retirement and suits up for the Bulls again. Number 3. Decorated history. So I did the search for the Bulls because I knew they haven't had that many great players in their history in terms of Batmans anyways, but on the contrary, I'm pretty sure the Lakers have employed a better roster of all-time players than any other franchise, and it'll be that way for quite some time and maybe even forever. Because of that, I wanted to do something similar for the Lakers. How many 50-point games do they have in their franchise history and who's responsible for them? Well, remember how I told you MJ has 36 50-point games to himself? Yeah, surprisingly enough, the Lakers only have 37 of them in their entire history. Those performances are spread over 6 different players named Kobe, Wilt Chamberlain, Shaq, Jerry West, Gail Goodrich, and Cedric Ceballos. Wait, you're telling me Kareem never scored above 50 points? That one surprised me a bit. It surprised me even more that with names like Kobe and Shaq, there weren't more 50-point games in their history. But what didn't surprise me and won't surprise you at all is that Kobe Bryant owns 27 of those 50-point games. The other 10 are spread out between the rest of the guys, and Ceballos only accounts for 1 of those. If you're surprised Wilt Chamberlain didn't push this number up after everything you've heard about him, you're probably just a bit young. He played a different brand of basketball in Los Angeles, which will be important later in this video, so hang on to that thought for a few minutes. Number 2. All that for nothing? This one is actually really fun. Could you imagine scoring 60 points in a game for your team, but you still wind up losing the game? How would that even happen? If I score 60 points and we still lose, we throwing hands in that locker room. Well, this actually happened 8 times in NBA history. I lost count of how many times it happened when a player scored 50 points, so we won't even get into that. Anyways, we're gonna go backwards so it gets more dramatic as I list. Bernard King dropped 60 points on Christmas Day and lost, which was a huge bummer, but it was a Knicks, so what did you honestly expect? Jordan dropped 61 and the Bulls took an L. Funny enough is that almost exactly 365 days before this happened, he put 63 on the Celtics in the playoffs and took the L. George Gervin posted 63 and lost. Wilt Chamberlain posted 63 and lost. Jordan lost again after posting 64 points in a loss. Devin Booker actually just did this at Boston when he randomly caught fire and scored 70 points, and David Thompson scored 73 points and shot 73% and still lost the game. Try to wrap your mind around what I just said. This man made 73% of his shots, scored 73 points, and still lost. This happened in 1978 against the Pistons, and to top things off, they only lost this game by 2 points, 137 to 139. I think I would proceed to go play in traffic after that game. More random facts here. For the games that actually have data, only one player shot less than 50% in these games, and that was Wilt Chamberlain of all people, who shot 46% that night. It's pretty ironic that the huge superhuman with no equal was the least efficient, but he did make up for it by grabbing 32 rebounds to go with it, so did it even matter? Take a moment to think about that. 63 points, 32 rebounds. That has my career written all over it. And for what it's worth, technically nobody was inefficient in these games, and that's what makes it even more infuriating that they all lost, especially for Michael Jordan, who it happened to 3 times. Number 1, maybe he was human. So I saved this one for last since it was pretty much like 3 stats in one. Here we're looking at Wilt Chamberlain, who was always known as a man amongst boys. You only ever hear about the ridiculous numbers he seemed to put up every night, but you rarely ever hear about the nights that he looked mortal. I started this by being extra and looking at his head-to-head matchups against Bill Russell. Make no mistake, Wilt absolutely punished Boston with many high-scoring nights, but there were a few times where he seemed to be absent. For instance, the lowest point total that Russell ever held Wilt Chamberlain to in a head-to-head matchup was 8. There's probably not a chance in hell the tape of this game exists where I can get to it because it happened in 1967, so I had to confirm there was nothing out of the ordinary that day, and there wasn't. Wilt Chamberlain played all 48 minutes and Russell played 43 minutes. Wilt shot 3 for 11, and that worked out to a 27.3 field goal percentage. There has to be a catch here, right? Of course there is. Wilt Chamberlain grabbed 33 freaking rebounds and had 6 assists, but that still didn't stop Russell from taking the W as usual. Russell wasn't really a scorer anyways, but he too only had 5 points to go with 19 rebounds. Since Wilt looked somewhat human that night, at least on the offensive end, I had to ask, how many times was Wilt ever even held under 10 points in his entire career? Well, I found that out of 1,045 games that Wilt played, he actually had 108 games where he scored 10 points or less. I know, out of a sample size that big, it was probably expected that this happened sometimes, but I'd be lying if I said that I expected almost 10% of his career games to have dipped that low. And finally, by what's on record, Chamberlain actually did have one scoreless game in his career. It came in March 1973 with the Lakers in a 1-point loss to Kareem's Bucks. Wilt did have 14 rebounds that game, and like I told you to remember earlier, he played a different role with the Lakers. Earlier in his career, he was always thinking score, 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 but when it came to winning, or maybe even him just trying to chase another statistical record, he tried to change that and facilitate a bit more while trusting his teammates, especially when it was a guy like Jerry West. Maybe it doesn't excuse the 0 points, but it at least gives you an idea of why that would have happened around this time and not in his earlier days. And that's what I got for you guys today. When I came up with this video idea, I kinda just wanted to do pointless stats, but after I got done with the video, I found out some things that were actually kinda interesting, so definitely let me know in the comment section if you thought they were interesting. I know for a fact some of them were pointless, but that's why I said pointless and random and interesting, so let me know if you enjoyed the video, and if you have any random stats that you know of for any kind of reason, make sure to leave those in the comment section too, because this was actually kinda fun. Hit the like button, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and hit the bell next to my name if you want notifications on future videos. I'm Dom2K, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.